Let's pull up a cup of coffee and let's talk some spoilers for Arrival. Oh, that's hot. That's hot. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk for Arrival. I am still thinking about this movie, and I think that's a good thing, because it's just one of those movies that it's in my head. I'm churning things over and over. There's things I'm wondering, did I really like that they did that? Did I not like it? But I like that I'm still going over it. So this movie really did its job, man. And so I just need to talk about it more today. So I'm doing my spoiler talk, and the key there is it's spoilers. So if you want to see my spoiler-free review, if you haven't seen the movie, then I would recommend check out my spoiler-free review. Click that link and check it out, because this movie is really good, and it's too good to be spoiled here. So if you want to check out the spoiler talk and join the conversation in the comments, I would love that, and I invite you to check out the movie and then come right back here to this spot, and let's continue on the conversation. So without further ado, here we go. One of the fascinating things about this movie was Amy Adams' character, Louise. She was just a really interesting character. And where I want to start is where this movie opened with her narration. CinemaSins is going to sin that because, you know, narration. But I really did enjoy that opening narration because it introduced us to Louise and it got us to get to know the character really well. In that opening narration, it's a little montage about her life, and it's like she's telling a story to her daughter, which you get from the way she's talking past tense that the daughter is dead. So she's trying to figure out and talk about, where does the story begin for you, my daughter? And she just starts to go into it, and you see the happy times with her daughter, and you know it's building to tragedy. You just know it. And you know by the lack of a husband in this picture that they're already divorced. So there's already some kind of tragedy there somehow. But she says a few very key things in that opening speech that it didn't make the movie predictable, but it made me go, oh, so this is what the movie's actually about. She started to talk about time and how we're so bound to time. We're so bound to it being linear. And so that's the only way that we know how to think, which, number one, was a really good point. But the moment I heard that in there, I just went, okay, so this movie is going to deal with time. And I knew it wasn't going to be a time travel movie, so I knew that. But I knew somehow we were going to, in some way, shape, or form, unravel time, or at least unravel our concept of time. So just right there, in just the first minute of the movie, I went, okay, so that's what this is somehow going to be about. Who knows what these aliens want, but it's going to be something to do with time, and they're not going to be bound by time, and somehow her daughter is going to be a big part of this. And so when the daughter dies, and you see she dies of some kind of cancer, and it's really sad, it's heartbreaking, it's emotional. I think Amy Adams did a great job portraying that. And so, like, you really kind of feel for her character. And then she says some things define your story, like the day they arrived. And that's when we really get into the movie. And when we get into the movie, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And maybe this is where you could correct me in the comments or tell me what you saw in the comments. But where it started off here, it felt like, the way the movie opened, that the stuff with her daughter was a flashback. And now we're going forward to the day these aliens arrived, because she felt very lonely and she felt very sad to me in this movie. So it felt like that was her background, and this is why she was lonely and sad. And so I was buying that. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's gotta be a horrifyingly scarring event. So you feel like she's carrying that weight going into this movie. So moving forward, the aliens arrive, Forrest Whitaker comes, picks her up, takes her to the site, and we meet Jeremy Renner there and things like that. And so, first off, like I said in my review, it was just amazing the first time they entered the ship. I mean, just the way the music was so ominous as they were walking down that hallway. And it was pretty funny when that little thing gets them up inside the ship, and then the gravity changes and they have to jump, and then they flip upside down, but they're standing upside right by their perspective, and Jeremy Renner falls flat on his face trying to attempt this. I mean, things like that were pretty hilarious. But then you had that long walk down the hall to the glass where they were going to talk to these aliens and tried to figure out how to communicate, and all of that was so amazingly done. The music, the direction, the acting, the lighting, just the contrast between the dark hallway, the light screen, and all that stuff, it really did give such an ominous feel. When the aliens first appeared, and I kind of saw this in the trailers, I don't know, I didn't like the tentacle aliens. Even though that was not my favorite creature design for the aliens, the way they were utilized in the movie was very good. So it's not like I can sit there and complain or hold that against the movie or call it a negative. It's just personal preference. I didn't think that was the coolest thing they could do for an alien look, but at the same time, the way they used it, they did a really good job. And the way they used their tentacles and squirt the ink-like smoke, and that is them writing their language and things like that. A lot of that was just so incredibly interesting. But what got more interesting for me is when she really started to get into the language and trying to figure out what they're talking about. And what continued to be interesting to me was how she was trying to figure out what their symbols meant, what their language meant, and trying to make sure she got the context of the language, because they threw out the word "use the weapon," the aliens did, and that's the way we humans interpreted it. And, of course, they're trying to keep that hush-hush. Of course, it gets leaked and things like that. And one of the things I really liked is I really felt like this movie dealt with the impatience of man. Man is so impatient. What are they doing? We need to ask the priority one question now. Why are they here? She's like, no, we can't ask that, because we got to know if they even know what a question is. We got to know if they know what purpose is. We got to know if they know what these things are. But then we also got to understand from their perspective what these things are so that we can understand the answer when they get it. But it dealt with the impatience of human beings like, no, we got to figure this out now. Oh, we can't? And there was a word weapon in there that we interpret? Blow them up! And so, it was very interesting the way that it dived into our impatience just to hurry through things, where a little patience and taking our time and a little less panic can bring about some really good answers. And I like that Amy Adams was really trying to bring that about in this movie. But as she was trying to decipher the language, the thing that was really interesting, and I thought this was pretty obvious, we're seeing, at the time, what looked like flashbacks to her daughter. And each flashback was fascinating, because it had to do with what she was dealing with presently. It had to do with a question she had about a language, and then all of a sudden she'd go deep into this flashback, and when I say deep, it was deep. I know these aliens were trying to speak to her that way, but I felt like the movie did not exaggerate that or overplay that, so it became a really interesting factor trying to figure out, okay, how are they communicating with her like this? Are they communicating her like this? Is she going a little crazy? What is going on? I mean, I knew she wasn't going crazy, but the movie really did make you think. And then before you know it, she's starting to see the future, and she sees, the ship flies up higher, so people don't really have access to it after, some people went in with a bomb and tried to blow it up, because, they were scared of the weapon word. Again, the impatience of man. So the ship went up higher, but she had some kind of dream or vision of them sending a little pod down for her to get into. So she went and got into the pod. This is the part that was the most like Contact to me, where she went up inside the ship. And it was a weird environment. Like, instead of being in the dark, dank hallway, she was in a white, cloudy area. And I'm like, is she underwater? Where is she? Like, the environment was so weird. And I'm thinking, can she breathe? Why does her hair look like it's animated? And then the aliens came and they were talking to her, and it's interesting because I didn't realize she learned that much of their language that fast. So I kind of had to buy into that there, but I didn't mind buying into it there because I was just so interested in what was going on. And we find out when they said use the weapon, they meant their language. Not their language is a weapon, but they just meant gift. And their language was a gift. And, it could be a tool. It could be a weapon. And so it was kind of interesting for her to try to figure that out. And then she has this flashback again to her daughter, Hannah, and that's what she named her daughter, and her daughter's name is spelled the same way forwards and backwards. So you can look at it forwards and backwards, and it's still the same. And then it dawned on her, read the language forwards and backwards. So she's looking at these characters that are circles, looking at them forwards and backwards. It dawned on her how to read the language. This is where it takes a very, very interesting turn, because it turns out that the language was a gift that when you could figure out how to read it, it opened your mind, almost changing the brain chemistry so that for you don't experience time linearly. You can see the future and things like that. And so this is where a lot of the big reveals started to come. Like, her daughter was not her past. That was her future. All the stuff with the daughter had never happened. Turned out Jeremy Renner was the husband and the father of that daughter. And it turns out they divorced because she told him at some point about how the daughter was going to die, and Jeremy Renner couldn't take it, so he divorced her. Now, this is the part where my wife truly did not like this ending. She did not like this big reveal. And she didn't like it because of the light it kind of colored Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner in. Like, Jeremy Renner being the guy who's like, what? Oh, I can't take this, I'm leaving. Where in the movie, you don't really see that he's that kind of character. You don't get that he's that kind of guy. And then with Amy Adams, you know, she even asks the question, like, if you could see the future, would you change anything? And I get her not changing that she would have her daughter, because you could tell she desperately loved her daughter in these visions of the future. You could tell that. So yeah, of course she's not going to change that. But I figure she might change how she breaks the news to Jeremy Renner what's going to happen. She might change how she's going to talk to him. But I guess she didn't, so she didn't do anything to prevent that divorce. But then that raises the other question. If she's seeing the future, is that a solid future she's seeing? Like, is that exactly what's going to happen? Or is it the shadow of things that may be only, to quote Charles Dickens? So that actually raised that question, didn't answer it, it just raised it. And I don't think it's negative that it didn't answer that question, because I feel like she could have changed it if she wanted to, and I'm sure she had her reasons for not, but I would like to know those reasons. But then maybe it is a solid future, and maybe she couldn't change it, so she waited till the appropriate time to tell Jeremy Renner, and he freaked out. I don't know. It made you think about time. It made you think about all these different things that are kind of heavy and weighty, but I felt like it didn't go over my head at all. Like, I don't think it was talking over me. It was just, I like thinking movies, and this was a really thinking movie, and it had a lot of things that were really intense. But what I really couldn't help but wonder is after they did that big reveal that the daughter was in the future and not in the past, why was she so sad and kind of down in the beginning? I mean, maybe she wasn't, but I felt like that was the impression I got. But maybe I got the impression because of that opening narration that showed the tragedy of the daughter. And so maybe that's what colored my view of her character there in the beginning. But, like, I couldn't tell if she had all along been seeing the future, because those aliens did say she had the gift and that she could see the future. So was she already seeing vivid pictures of the future like they were memories of her daughter? Or was she not seeing that at all? Because I feel like you could find indications that go both ways on that. You could find an indication that says she saw those visions of the future from the very beginning. Or I think there's plenty of indications to say no, she only started seeing them when she started deciphering the language. But I can't figure that out, which is another reason that I really want to see this movie again. Because if she was seeing the future before, I could see why in the beginning she was sad. But if she wasn't seeing the future before, I would like to know a little bit more why she felt a little sad to me. Or if it was just the way that the opening narration colored it for me. So those are things that I'd like to know, and those are reasons I'd like to see it again. Now, I gave this movie a B+ grade, and I don't want to go back on that. But I want you to know I'm really struggling, because I really did enjoy this movie. And the fact that it's Saturday, I'm still thinking about this movie, that's a good thing. And I really enjoyed it, and I really would like to see it again. I don't have to own it on Blu-ray, but I kind of want to. So I don't know. We'll see if I end up getting it on Blu-ray or not, but it's one way or the other. It's definitely a movie I want to see again. I want to pick up on those notes that I didn't see before. So you heard what I had to say. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. What did you catch that I didn't, that maybe you can help me understand something? Or are we in the same boat trying to figure out the same things? Let's talk about this in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button. Become a Durbanian, be on top of all the new videos coming out here on Durbania, like tomorrow, doing a reading way too much into Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, getting ready for Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Then Monday, Laura and I both doing a Durbin Talks about Harry Potter rankings. So we're going to rank from 8, our least favorite, to number 1, our most favorite Harry Potter movie. So be a part of that and join that conversation. I'm Durbin. Thank you so much for checking out Durbania.